Many thanks for staying with us on the program. We're still talking about Mr. President's plan to make a presentation to the Joint National Assembly on Wednesday, that of the 2024 budget. And based on what we heard on Monday, that it will be about 27.5 trillion naira. After that, the president is expected to travel down to Dubai for the COP28 Climate Summit. With me in the studio to further discuss this is TVC News Executive Editor Kadilade. And it's good to have you join me in the studio.
Pleasure, Ambassador.
All right. So finally, we'll have the president on Wednesday present the budget to the National Assembly. It's the first full budget of this administration. Just how significant will this document be?
Yeah, significant in the sense that his predecessor, that's President Muhammadu Buhari, started this idea of January to December cycle, and it's a noble idea. It's for us to know how we are planning, and the ball is going to be in the court of the lawmakers to ensure that this budget is passed by December. And that's a tall order because quite a lot of them are already planning their holidays. They're already looking at what they want to do with their December, vacation. But having said that this budget has to be passed, it says a lot. It says a lot that they shouldn't just give us the excuse that because of the deadline, therefore things are going to be done in a haste. But I think they need to be thorough as usual. They need to be detailed as usual. And we should not have room for, you remember that language, the budget padding, where you just see all kinds of additions in the budget. So we'll expect that there will be a thorough, a painstaking job. And even looking at the figures, some may be alarmed that what a huge number, but bearing in mind that a lot of things have changed in the last 6, 7, or 8 months thereabout, talking about the subsidy removal, talking about how much we are getting into the coffers, things have really changed. And we're also looking at a new minimum wage that will also be reflected. We don't have what the budget looks like until the president makes a presentation tomorrow. And then we will have analysis of different sectors in terms of distribution. So let people not be alarmed about the figure, but rather we should look at, in terms of budget performance, what's the percentage we are looking at in this new year? Because this government seems to be they have a lot, especially when it comes to infrastructural deficit. They have a lot to do. We will expect some kind of jump up in the capital project instead of too much recurrence, because I see some kind of dicey situation because of the minimum wage that is going to shoot up.
Yes.
There might be that temptation, to have a higher recurrent above capital. But I know this government wants to make a whole lot of impression when it comes to capital projects. So let's hope that the budget will be fair. I believe it's been done by some experts, and this is the time to see the real work being done.
Indeed, and Nigerians are actually waiting to see what the content of that document would be. You spoke about infrastructure. As it is, the president has actually written to the National Assembly seeking their approval for some loans to, fund some projects, about $8.69 billion and 100 million euros external loan. And then the monies are actually to be deployed to address huge infrastructure deficits in the country. So this appears to be much needed, isn't it?
Yes, Nigerians are usually very, very sensitive when it comes to getting loans. They should remember that these bodies have a very, very low percentage in terms of interest. So this is as good as somebody just assisting you, but trust me, economists will tell you that you need to be careful when somebody is offering you loans. But in this case, I think it's a situation where the people concerned, especially the AFDB, is a Nigerian who also feels that apart from being a Nigerian, Nigeria plays a critical role in the continent of Africa. So the development that we see in Africa is very germane to how Africa should be perceived. So there are some, in quote, positive interest in these loans that is being sourced for. And for the fact that they have also shown interest in giving us this loan, I think it will be a bit unwise of us if we refuse to collect such loans. So that loan is important. That loan is Trust me, you know, there are some places where you work, when you get a non-interest loans, won't you take it? This is a way of telling you that instead of you saving money to do stuff, take this money and pay back without, you know, zero or very few number of interest rates. So I feel that it's not out of place. Let Nigeria not be alarmed by the headlines.
Perhaps
what is important is we need to fix the infrastructural deficit. It's quite alarming, it's quite appalling, and very, very disgraceful. Sometimes when we do some of these reports as journalists and we see the kinds of roads that people are still passing in the 21st century, you wonder that is Africa really cursed? So I wouldn't blame the president, I won't blame this administration if they need to be aggressive in fixing some of these infrastructural deficits.
And the concerns by Nigerians, you know, might not just be brushed aside, because we're not exactly a credit society, you understand? So
exactly.
When you talk about houses, for instance, people want to build to own. People don't want to talk about mortgages. They don't want to get into all of those deals.
It's a high level of ignorance. It's a high level of ignorance that you even see in some religious circle where you talk about loan and people will tell you you're poor. They think it's something you should wish away, that you shouldn't collect loans. These are normal things. You don't save to buy a car. You don't save to buy houses. But that's the way we grew up. That's the way some of us grew up. But then we are getting exposed. Some of us are traveling to different places, and we see that it's almost a taboo to approach things from that angle. So, but then you wouldn't blame Nigerians when you look at the interest rate and you look at the way it multiplies. It can be very disheartening.
Yes, yes. We need to quickly bring in Femi Akonde, our State House correspondent. Femi, it's definitely going to be a busy day for Mr. President on Wednesday. Walk us through, you know, the movement from the National Assembly and then the trip to Dubai.
Via the IFB.
Well, Femi, walk us through the president's itinerary as he presents the 2024 budget to the National Assembly and then his visit to Dubai. All right, I would get back to Femi. Now, back to you, Kayode, in the studio. We're talking about infrastructure and loans. You know, it's important that when these monies come, the people see those monies used for the projects for which they have been earmarked, because then it becomes troubling and disturbing when you realize that these monies are maybe being diverted to other uses or being looted, as we heard, you know, in the past years.
Yeah, so interestingly, kudos to some agencies like Budget and some other people who are doing a real tracking of how budgets are being expended. So, and trust me, journalists are also not going to stay aloof to see the budget performance. These are things that, things are very clear. Let this thing be published on website. You remember the drama that happened in Lagos, and it dovetailed into many states going online to see the details of budget. So in terms of expenses too, we will expect that such tracks, you know, are being done. And don't also forget that the presidency also set up that structure where is it Usman now, the special advisor to the president on policy, will be also benchmarking and tracking these ministers in terms of their performance. Yes, in terms of their performance. So this is not going to be business as usual. Don't also forget that strong language from the president that in 6 months, people are going to be appraised. There is going to be a KPI for these ministers on what they've done. And you could see some of them, it's not a secret, that some of them have even started using their funds while waiting for things to adjust to get the job started, because somebody is going to be assessed. Somebody is going to be judged. So if we have this budget signed into law by December and they do all the bureaucratic bottlenecks are removed and we get into the full year by January, we are going to be making demands. We are going to look at item by item what is happening. And so trust me, Nigerians are not going to be passive about this. It's not only Mr. President that has given them their KPIs. We as Nigerians too, we have given them these KPIs. We want to see how many roads are fixed, What is happening to East-West Road?
Yes.
What is happening to, because from the lawmakers now, the House of Reps, they've also asked that the Lagos-Ibadan Road should have, overhead bridge. I mean, they should have pedestrian bridges on these express roads. These are few things that people in their locality will be asking questions. And after that December, or we may not even wait till December before we start crying. What is happening to some of these things that are in the budget?
Exactly, and for some of the promises that the president has made, for instance, that the Port Harcourt refinery would, start refining again, would get to see the product by December, and that by January the student loan would have to kick off in earnest after about 3 or 4 months of delay. How do you see that pan out?
Promises being kept is a very serious issue. Apart from the fact that there may not be a law binding people fulfilling their promises during campaign, but the moral obligation is very key. I just saw a news few minutes ago before I got into the studio. I think, was it Osun or Ondo State, where about 6,000 inmates have been released and federal government paid their fines. These people are inside prisons because they could not pay their fines. So federal government has paid their money just as part of the renewed hope agenda to decongest prisons. So that gives me some kind of, a good sense that, so politicians can also keep to their promises. So these are the kind of things we want to see. So beyond prisoners being released, let's also see projects being, being executed. Let's see promises being fulfilled. It shouldn't be the penultimate year to the end of the tenure when another election is coming. That's when we see them fulfilling some of these promises. It starts immediately. It starts from May 29, and we must see this thing being materialized. So it's quite important that these promises has got to be fulfilled.
And the presentation of the budget on 29th of November is quite significant. That's exactly 6 months after the president took over the helm of affairs.
That's true. So for me, I think the honeymoon is over. It is time to ask the hard question: what is happening to, we've told Nigerians to bear with this government. We've told Nigerians to understand that the removal of subsidy is going to bring succor at the end of the day. It is time to have that, real-time manifestation of those things. Otherwise, a whole lot of people will need to ask that question again. Why remove the subsidy?
And people really want to know what the funds are being used for, because it's just expected that, yes, subsidy has been removed, so we should have a lot in our foreign reserves, and then we should be able to do so much more in the community, and not just about the palliative that are being distributed to people, because a lot of people ask questions about the sustainability.
The palliative is meant to be temporary, and you've seen a whole lot of analysts come to define what palliative is all about. The government has not even said that the 25,000 or the 35,000 naira is going to go beyond 6 months. Yes. They also are aware that you can't talk about increases when there is no budget approval for that effect. So, and the labor also understands that, irrespective of the drama we've seen in terms of strikes, in terms of some kind of labor disharmony that called out to come in. The real time to know whether this government is keeping to its promise, it's from January, when the budget year will start, and we can do a proper assessment to say that subsidy is gone. I'm a layman when it comes to economics, but people will say there's more money, but I know that's not the way economists think.
Especially
but one thing is clear, that the government has even said that they have saved a whole lot of money that have been going into some few individuals. It has come into government coffers. State government have started feeling it. State government, this is not just about the federal government. The state government also need to understand that their budget year should also start its manifestation. Trust me, by the time President Tinubu presents his own budget, you will see a whole lot of state governors also doing theirs. You may not blame them. Some of them, they are also looking at the allocation that is coming to them. They're also looking at some of the things that will come to their state. They're also looking at, are we going to help the federal government to do some of the federal roads in our state? By the time they see some of those things in the budget, it will help them to follow suit and do their own budget presentation.
Yes, and I know that very recently, was it Niger State now that had to flag off the construction of a road on behalf of the federal government, and hopefully the government would actually reimburse at the completion of that project. So the state and local governments also have something to do because they're also arms of government, or is it?
This should be a discussion for another day, because if we delve into that, trust me,
yes,
the time is not, but in order not to dodge your question, I think this is a problem that I'm particularly angry about. There's a problem where a whole lot of states are calling for devolution of power, for them to have more powers, and they are denying the top tier of government the power to also do their things. As simple as billboards, as simple as clearing gutters and doing some of those things, state governments are being made just a lame dog. So these are things that we will be looking at. Let this thing move down to the top tier of government. Otherwise, let's scrap the top tier of government. They cannot be bearing that name. They can't be collecting salary. They can't be collecting allowances as councillors. And at the end of the day, I have seen all kinds, not just in Lagos. You will see councillors, just sitting down in a beer parlor, drinking every day when there are work to be done. Yeah. And you may not blame them when there's nothing to do.
Absolutely. And, well, it's a great way to end the conversation today. I've been speaking with Kyle Delade, the executive editor, TVC News. Thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure.